watching In Honor Of. It's a program for veterans. It's about veterans and things that veterans need. We have a very, very special guest who's come back to join us again. Let's see.
Brigadier General.
Is a commissioner, is a doctor, is a general. She carries all of these wonderful titles. Commissioner Laurie Sutton, New York City Veterans Affairs Commissioner. And I want to thank you so much for coming. It's really
always an honor, Ed.
Always.
Thank you and Paul for all that you're doing for our community.
And my co-host, Paul Dietrich. Paul, thank you for making it work. He puts these things together for me. I just kind of take credit for him. Yeah.
He's pretty tenacious, I'll tell you.
He does, you're right. And Paul, I want to thank you for this wonderful Navy tie. You'll observe the anchors and everything.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They're not even fouled anchors.
Paul brought me a...
And look at your tie. Boy, oh boy, we're blessed.
Commissioner, let's see, it's been about a year now since we last saw you?
I believe it has been.
Okay, what's going on in the world of veterans?
What a difference a year makes. We just actually had our second anniversary on the 11th of July. Hard to believe, but this new agency, we've grown from just a couple of years ago under the old MOVA, the Mayor's Office of Veterans Affairs. We had 4 people on board. Today, we are cleared with the new FY19 budget for 44. So we are very excited because, you know, no doubt, Ed, by city agency standards, that's very small. And we aim to keep it that way. We want to, you know, in the words of the Hamilton musical, we want to remain young, scrappy, and hungry so that we can truly innovate positive, sustainable changes that starts with veterans and their families and then spreads out to the whole city. It's another way that veterans and their loved ones can continue to serve. And isn't that what it's all about?
Yes. Right. Yeah.
We serve once in uniform, we get it in our DNA, and our job as a city agency is to support and empower veterans and their families to continue serving. That's what it's all about.
That's a good thing. It's a very good thing that you're doing. Yeah.
It is a good thing. And, you know, since we last spoke, we've done a lot of sort of good stuff in terms of reaching out and connecting with the over 211,000 veterans across the 5 boroughs. We've got 5 satellite offices now, including, you know, Matt Basile right here in Staten Island. And, but we've got posted office hours at the satellite office locations, and then we're also available to go to things like resource fairs and county fairs and events, barbecues, and different things, you know, places where veterans and their families go and where we can be a resource. We can connect, we can assist, and we can really bring the front line of hope and healing and intervention to the community where veterans and their families live.
What would be some of the most common problems that the veterans run into that come into your office?
Sure. I'll tell you, housing is a big one. No surprises there. You know, we started out early on in my tenure. The city was in the midst of a national campaign to end veteran homelessness.
Right.
In 2015, New York City was certified by the federal government as having ended chronic veteran homelessness. Now we're continuing, we're on a roll here. This is a mission that doesn't stop. We get 100 to 120 new homeless veterans every month. And so over these last couple of years, we've been able to maintain a steady state as we've built this system that, you know, rapidly marries up the homeless veteran in shelter with one of our veteran peer coordinators, and then we work across city government and across the service providers all across the city and at all levels of government to get that veteran and his or her family into permanent housing, and then provide aftercare to make sure that they don't slip back. Okay. Now that's one element, one dimension of the challenge. And if you'll let me just brag for a moment here, Ed.
Yes.
You know, as a country over these last several years, we have reduced veteran homelessness by 47%. Amazing. Here's the kicker. In New York City, where the affordable vacancy rate is less than 1%, we have reduced that number by 90%. And it didn't happen by accident. New York City had access to the same resources as other locations across the country. But what we've done here uniquely in New York City is we have, first of all, we've created veteran peer coordinators, and they make a huge difference because their only role is to get that veteran where he or she needs to be, get them polished up for the interview, get them to sign the paperwork, get them to know what it is to live in a home again, and get them into that permanent housing and maintain the connection. We also have established a landlord hotline where landlords can call us directly, and they have a real person to deal with. And we will hack through the city bureaucracy to get that veteran where they need to be. We've worked with the city to develop the by name tracker so that we can really case manage and work with subpopulations of homeless veterans. It makes it much more effective. And then I'll tell you, the mayor, in 2015, he challenged us. He said, okay, he says, I know that there are certain programs that the federal government funds, like the HUD-VASH vouchers and the Section 8. And he says, I know that there's certain things here in the city, like NYCHA and HPD, but he says, I want to know what are those subpopulations of veterans who are not eligible for any of the existing programs. And once we've identified what their needs are, then we will make sure that there is a voucher, there is a program for every veteran. And you can see what a difference that makes to take a whole population perspective. So that's one dimension of our effort on housing and support services that is ongoing. It's the most mature line of action that we have, and we're very proud of what they're doing. And we're now in a position, actually, where we are looking for creative ways, not just to identify existing units that would be appropriate and available for veterans and their families, but also to work with developers and folks across the city who are interested in new developments. Just last week we went to the Bronx where Jericho Project, which is one of the main service providers, and they do so much good work, not just for veterans, but certainly they have been a pioneer in New York City for veterans. This was the first development that's opened up under the 1515, the initiative that Mayor de Blasio introduced a couple of years ago to put 15,000 new supportive housing units in place over the next 15 years. It takes a while to get these developments up and going and running, so this is the first of what will be a continued progression up to that 15,000. We also know, it's so important to not just focus our efforts on the veteran homelessness issue, but that's where we start, with those who are most vulnerable. We also know that we've got to really work together with the mayor, with the city, across city government, to address the affordable housing issue. And we're so excited now. We've got a new deputy mayor. You may have heard that Phil Thompson has taken Richard Bury's place. Now, we were so blessed over these, first couple of years of our transition from MOVA to DVS to be under Deputy Mayor Bury's leadership. He's the guy who did the impossible early on in the mayor's first term when he, folks said it couldn't be done. What, you're going to add a whole nother year of schooling to the nation's largest school system, and you're going to do that in 6 months? Well, the mayor's leadership and the Deputy Mayor Bury, just his dogged determination, got it done. Pre-K for all. And of course, now the city's working on, 3 for all to be able to get even earlier and younger. Well, so Deputy Mayor Bury, he's now gone off to do some other things in the city, again, still working with education. And we're blessed with a new deputy mayor, Phil Thompson, who actually, he's from Philadelphia originally, kind of a scrappy, tough upbringing, but he said one of the real just strengths of his background and his family is that his grandfather, his father, his uncles were all in the service, all the way back to World War I, and he really he grasps the strength of military families, of service, and he gets it. And then he actually, Deputy Mayor Thompson, he was in the Dinkins administration. So back in the late 80s, early 90s. So he's known the mayor, he's known former Mayor Dinkins for a very, very long time. He knows the city. He also, for the last 18 years, has been working up at MIT. And he's been working as a urban planner and a city architect, a visionary. And so as we've started working together now, it's very, very exciting to get his expertise in city planning and marry that up with his connection to and his passion for veterans and their families. So I think you're going to hear some really exciting things coming up under his leadership now that the mayor's brought him. The mayor phoned him, I guess, a few months ago during the transition. He was in Columbia at the time.
Commissioner, we were talking about affordable housing. How does that impact your office?
Absolutely. Ground level, our foundational work, of course, is with those who are most vulnerable. Those are the homeless veterans. But we also know we have a lot of veterans contact our office. Some of them have just newly arrived. They're, they're here to use their GI Bill, and some of them get into trouble with landlords who say that that's not an income. And of course, we give them then on our website, we have a letter on city letterhead that will notify landlords and let them know that this is revenue and that they must accept it as revenue. It's illegal to refuse that. But of course, the supply of affordable housing in New York City, it's a problem affecting everyone. So what we're doing is we are now working very closely, with the mayor's team, Deputy Mayor Thompson, and our partners across city government and the city to identify where are the new sort of opportunities that we could ensure that veterans and their families be included within. Now, I'll tell you, tomorrow we're going here on Staten Island. We're going to a development called, it's the Bay Street Housing Initiative, and I'm really looking forward to learning what's going on there. I know that there are others. Seaview?
Yes, Seaview is another place here on Staten Island. I know a number of veterans live in that facility, and that was rehabbed buildings from the old Seaview complex, which was a retirement type home. And there's a number of other buildings on the site, so if you get a chance to visit Seaview, I would ask you to take a look. The buildings are there. One other place that I would suggest here on Staten Island is we used to have a Marine hospital. And that facility, the hospital building is being utilized, but around it there were homes for the Marine doctors, and there were apartment buildings in the complex, and they're still there. They just haven't been utilized very much, but the buildings are there. And to me, it's a waste. You know where the old Marine Hospital is, right? It's right down on Stapleton.
Vanderbilt and Bay Street.
Vanderbilt and Bay Street. It's a phenomenal complex. So.
Oh, listen, these are the kinds of opportunities that you don't find out about them until you get out and start talking to folks. So
yes.
I can't thank you enough for those ideas. I would also say that if any of your listeners, if they have any ideas, let us know. I know that we've engaged with some of the leadership from the VFW and American Legion, because we know that there are some posts and meeting halls where there might be some interest. If we could get some, zoning changes and do some mixed-use facilities that would include the meeting place, the resource center, the community gathering, as well as some housing for veterans, wouldn't that be great?
Yes.
So I'm very excited to be at this point in our trajectory. My aim here is over these next 3.5 years is we're going to have a vibrant, sustainable national model agency, the Department of Veteran Services, to hand over to the next mayor and the next commissioner who comes behind me. Yep. And affordable housing is absolutely at the crux of that mission.
That's a very big item with a lot of the veterans. And, you know, all right, I'm Vietnam era myself, but the ones that are coming back home from Iraq, Afghanistan, anything in the Middle East where they are, these are the young people that we got to help
absolutely
get on their feet family-wise and health-wise, you know, which is another thing I was going to ask you about. As far as health coverage for these veterans, is there anything that, once again, that your office does that is over and above what other agencies already do?
Well, you know, I'm very excited to share with you an initiative that has been several years in the making. It's a coordinated service network that it operates today. It's called NY Serves, okay. And it started here as a pilot project back in January of 2015. Today it has over 85 vetted service providers. The VA has been a member since day one, including the vet centers. That's huge. It's not just health and mental health. It's much more than that. It's legal services, health, mental health. It's CUNY was the educational pillar. The city's lead agency was small business services. Well, this service model, this is our initial big investment as the new agency. So the procurement being what it is, it's taken our first 2 years to get everything lined up, but I think it looks like we're all set to rebrand this existing network as Vet Connect NYC sometime this fall. We're very excited about that. What will it mean for the new veteran and his or her family who's perhaps just returning to Staten Island?
Right.
First of all, what it means is that we can work with the services, meaning at the Pentagon, you know, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guardsmen. You may have noticed in May, New York City was designated as a Coast Guard city. We're very proud of that, standing tall with Borough President Otto and the mayor and the commandant. How cool was that? But we know that by working with the service chiefs, they're interested in connecting us with those service members and their families who are in their final 12 months of service.
That's when you have to get them.
Yeah, that's when you have to get them. And that's how this service platform is really going to be so effective in letting them know, listen, this is us in New York City. If your hometown is Staten Island, well, let us connect you with a mentor. We have 25 agencies that currently do mentoring for veterans and their families and service members. And we know how important mentoring is. You know, when we, in the service, when we were leaving duty stations and going to our next duty station, you always had a sponsor. That's exactly right. And so that's replicating that. We're also very excited about the opportunity to work with the First Lady, Shirlane McRae, and her pioneering Thrive NYC program. This program, it's a roadmap, a comprehensive roadmap towards mental health. Initiatives that really cover the gamut of needs, everything from what you would expect perhaps in terms of access to quality mental health services, but rooted in communities. NYC Well is a 24/7 access line, and if you're a veteran or a family member or service member, you can call NYC Well. It's 1-888-NYC Well, and trained counselors on the other end will help then veterans, service members, and New Yorkers of all backgrounds get access to mental health services that fit their needs, that are convenient to their community, and that really help them get over that stigma. But everything from access to quality care to things like, evaluating new moms for postpartum depression and other difficulties. That's so critical. Training school-age kids in social and emotional learning skills. It's really exciting. Now, when it comes to veterans specifically, because of course veterans and their families could conceivably benefit from any of the programs that have been rolled out, but we are specifically funded in two areas. One is in outreach, and the other is in holistic services, our Core 4 Whole Health model. So we're very excited to be offering what no community yet has done in terms of taking the research from all of these last several years. You know, when I was still in the military, 2007 to 2010, the Army was in pretty rough shape. It was after the Walter Reed debacle. We just needed to get out in front of what was a burgeoning crisis, really. The signature weapon for Iraq and Afghanistan, of course, has been
IED.
IED, the improvised explosive device. Now, because of our great advances, our medical advances in resuscitation and evacuation and intensive care, I mean, you know, Paul, I mean, it's advanced so that a young troop who is injured in Iraq or Afghanistan can be stabilized there in country
on
a plane in 12 hours to Germany, further stabilized with intensive care in the air.
Yes.
The Air Force has developed, I mean, they can provide world-class intensive care in the air.
I personally saw service members who would not have survived when I was a medic surviving.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And I think it's important to note that the crisis that became the Walter Reed story that was published in the Post, it wasn't because service members there just didn't care about those who were returning. It was that we were saving lives, thankfully, that never would have been saved before.
And now you have a whole new bunch of problems.
Because when you have the signature weapon as the IED, you have not only blast concussive injuries, which we are still working to fully understand and to treat. You have projectile injuries from up to a mile away. Sure. You have amputations. You have internal injuries. You have hearing problems. And yes, you have traumatic brain injuries and post-traumatic stress issues, in addition to a whole host of other mental health issues that humans have. So the First Lady, when she, you know, I first heard in 2014, shortly after I got here, that this was going to be her signature initiative. Well, you know, for a career Army psychiatrist, it was music to my ears, and it remains just such a blessing. And you know that now the First Lady and her Thrive team have reached out across the country. There are over 250 cities across the country that are united in a coalition called Cities Thrive. And we're all learning together. And this is blue cities, red cities, purple cities, cities, you know, they just care about, you know, helping their citizens, keeping people alive. And it includes, of course, the opioid crisis and overdoses and things that are just plaguing communities across the country and, of course, right here in New York City. So we are so entirely blessed to have those resources, including the outreach and the Holistic Services Initiative, which, by the way, Ed, we have identified this as being the biggest gap in our Core 4 Whole Health model. Now, I think we probably talked about this a little bit last time, but just to remind you, it's my life in a pyramid, meaning that at the top of that pyramid, C4 is clinical treatment. Right. Of course, that's vital. But we want to be able to move the front line of hope, healing, and intervention from the clinic and the hospital, where half of our veterans will never go. Yep. We want to move that out to the front lines of community, where veterans and their families, where they continue to serve, where they work, where they go to school, and where they play, where they relax as a family. So we have invested mightily in culture and the arts. our public artist in residence, Brian Dories. He's done some of his performances right here in Staten Island, and he'll be back again. But this is so important to be able to connect veterans and their loved ones with the stories from 2,500 years ago, and the conversations that come out of that are just, I've never seen anything like it, and it just is such a great way of engaging veterans and families and surrounding communities, because of course reintegration isn't just about making veterans and their families whole. It's about reintegrating with the entire community. So that's C1, you know, grounded, just foundational strength that reminds our veterans they are not alone. They're not alone.
It's very important because 14 of the 20 that kill themselves every day, and that's the current rate, is 20 a day, veterans killing themselves. 14 of them never go for treatment.
Exactly. And so it's a place and a way to intervene in a way that seems normal, and it's in the community. Now, the optimal point of entry for our Core 4 model is C2, and that's connection, peer-to-peer connection.
Yep.
It's what we know. You get connected with a buddy who maybe, you know, felt clinical treatment or even holistic service. They just didn't want to mess. They said, I'm good. But you know what?
They'll talk to a veteran.
They'll talk to a veteran.
Exactly.
And that veteran can then help them navigate the way and find their way back to whole health so that they can continue serving. And you're exactly right. Early intervention is critical.
That's why when we lobbied last year, we got $1 million in the state budget for peer-to-peer counseling efforts.
Fantastic.
All they have to do is apply for it, because that's your biggest return, is a veteran talking to another veteran.
Absolutely.
We'd like to thank you for watching In Honor Of. We promise you good programming, and we'll continue to bring you good program to keep the veteran enlightened as to what's going on in the world of veterans. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my crew in the control room, Rosemary, directing, on audio, Roman, and out here on camera, Mark and JR. Guys, thanks so much. You hear every show. We thank you. You just keep watching In Honor Of. We love you for watching, and we'll keep to bring you programming.